So first, the bursar's office, our primary focus is to help you manage the student account and give you lots of resources on the best methods to make payments and how to navigate our bursar's functions. And so we support students and in the network, parents, anyone who's involved in the process for helping finance the education. And here are some of the what we help you manage your student accounts with. And one is e-billing, authorized user access, payment services, and refunds. First, with the e-billing, we have electronic bills that are sent to the students and their authorized payers every quarter. So these bills are sent quarterly. And then we have an option for each student to assign up to 10 authorized users to view and or pay tuition. Our due dates are based on registration. So when your student registers for class, you'll get a bill on the next bill cycle. Anything that happens after the bill production date, you will see on the next bill. And the authorized users, they have access to view the bill and or pay. And then you also have the option to use the 9-pay plan. The 9-pay plan ends October 18th. And what this is you can take your annual tuition charges and fees and break it up into 9 payments. And it's aligned with the academic year. And you can also sign up for direct debit where the funds can come directly out your checking account to make the 9 payments. And keep in mind with a 9-payment plan, you're not following the regular bill cycle. The payment for the annual 9-payment plan is the first of each month. So if you enrolled in a 9-pay plan, you have to pay a $75 enrollment fee and the first month payment. And the next payment will be October 1st and following November, December until the academic year is complete. And the payment services, you can pay by electronic check through your own authorized user access using your routing and checking account information. So it's basically an ACH payment. And we also accept international wire transfers. Our preferred vendor is Flywire, and Flywire, it's a way of sending funds with a low rate, and it's guaranteed to match the rates for any other international payments. And if you run into any situation where you find a vendor who has a lower rate for the international, you can contact the bursar's office. And they also have 24/7 customer service if you need help with the international payment. So you can sign up for the rest of the year, and then the rest of your bills will be through the 9-payment plan. And we also accept college saving plans checks. And so those checks, we prefer you to mail those checks directly to the bursar's office, and then we'll make sure that those payments are posted to the students' accounts. What's really important is to make sure you add the student's name and the ID number so we can easily identify the student and get the funds posted to their accounts. And then we have third-party contracts. And the third-party contracts is an option to have an employer, or in some cases, students have companies that are mailing checks for the students, and we can facilitate that process also. And I'll give a more detailed explanation of third-party in a later slide. And also, we also process refunds. And basically what the refunds are based on your financial aid. Once the financial aid disperses to your account, any amounts that's over the amount of the tuition and charges will refund the students. And then we also have direct deposit. And direct deposit is primarily for the students to receive their refunds to a checking account. And we prefer, it's more advantageous to use a direct deposit, so we encourage you to use direct deposit. And so this is how to know when what's due on the bill. We have direct charges, resources, and direct charges are primarily fees such as the tuition, the student services fee, the college class fee, UPass, and room and board, and in some cases, health insurance. And some parents have the option to waive the health insurance if you have a comparable insurance to replace with what the university has. And once you go through that process, it'll be removed. If it's approved, it'll be removed from the account and you'll see the update on the next bill. And then with the resources, it's typically financial aid, scholarships, 529 payments, and any other payments on the account. And so the direct charges minus the resources is what's due. And here's an example of how to authorize a user to pay tuition for students. And the student will log into their My UChicago account, click on the Finances tab, and access the account and billing, and then click on e-bill, e-pay. And from there, you'll see an option to add a new user. And so what happens is once you add the new user, the parent will get an email to change their password to a unique password for your own access to the student bill. And here's an example of what the home page looks like for the student. On the left side is the current balance, and then on the right side is where you would find a standard statement. And down here is where we see that there are authorized payers that are set up. And the current balance is the most up-to-date balance you will see on the student's account. And any activities that happen after a bill, you would see the change in the current balance, but you won't see it on the standard statement, because once that standard statement is sent out, it stays the same, and you'll see any other detailed updates on the next bill. And the standard statements are PDF, so if you need to print the invoice, you can print it. And here is an example of what the student's invoice looks like. The invoice has at the top the summary of all the activity within that billing cycle, and there's the statement details, and the statement details has all the activities that happen up to the date of that bill. And at the bottom here is the pending aid, and this is pending because it hasn't dispersed to the student's account. Once these funds disperse to the student account, then you'll have access to those funds, and what happens is it covers any tuition and fees that are on the student's account. And at the bottom is the net balance, accounting for the pending aid on the student's account. And a recap of our payment options: ACH payment, international payments, paper check, the 529 plan, and a 9-pay annual payment plan. Only fee that you will pay for the 9-pay plan is the $75 enrollment fee. And so it's spread, as I spoke before, it's spread over 9 months, and the enrollment ends October 18th. And authorized users have the capability to also make payments through this plan. And on the portal, there's a calculator to create your budget, and you put whatever you want to split on the 9-pay plan in this budget, and it'll calculate it for you. Anything outside of that budget follows the regular billing cycle. Every year that you enroll in a 9-pay plan, you'll get a $75 fee. And here are examples of what we mean when we say a third-party contract, billing, or 529 plans. And so the student account refunds are refunds that occur when financial aid, loan credits, including the Parent Plus, exceed the amount of direct charges. And with the Parent Plus loans, if you receive a refund for that, it goes to the parent's address that's on file with the Department of Education. And then also, too, again, we encourage you to enroll in direct deposit. All you need is your routing and checking account number to enroll in a direct deposit. You'll get it much faster than the mail process. And with our refund system, Once a refund is processed, you'll get an automatic email alert, and you'll have 24 hours to make any changes to how you want to receive your refund. And on our website, we have resources that you can find information about. And the primary areas that we have information is under the university students portion of the website. And in that section, you'll find a menu with information about the tuition and fees, student account resources, tax information, financial wellness, and a contact link is at the bottom of each page. And when you type into that form, an email directly comes to the bursar's office, and we'll respond to the email within 48 hours. And then also to the news feed, if we find something that we need to post on there to let you know what's going on in the bursar's office, we'll post that on the news feed. Like now we have how to pay the bill. And that's all I have. And the next presenter is Thaddeus Paskert. He'll speak with you about the financial aid process. Thank you.
As was mentioned, my name is Thaddeus Paskert. I work for the financial aid office here. We're going to be going over a few things today. We do ask that everyone holds their questions until the end of the presentation. We are recording this for folks that can't make it here. So in the interest of getting through the slides and providing the information we ask, if you do have any questions for myself or Bursar staff, we can answer all of them at the end of the presentation. So the things we're going to talk about for financial aid is the services that our office provides, how we calculate financial aid here at the university, and to a lesser extent how the government calculates it, how it's dispersed to your student's account, how student employment works, so if any of your students were offered an employment opportunity or something called federal work study, how that works, how students can maintain their aid eligibility, because that can change, how they renew their aid eligibility, they do need to reapply every year, of course, special circumstances, if there's anything that changes that we wanted to take a look at, we can do that, and then who can assist you if you do have questions. So our office's mission is to make the education here as affordable as possible. We strive to meet 100% of a family's demonstrated financial need, and we'll talk about how that works in a little bit. But two programs of note, our No Barriers program, which I'll talk about in a second, and the Empower program are both very generous aid programs that strive to make larger commitments to students over the course of the 4 years here, as opposed to just 1 year at a time. The services that our office provides is federal, state, and aid and institutional aid administration. So if any of your students are eligible from anything from the federal or state government, if you're an Illinois resident, we process that. Assistance in completing their applications, review of special circumstances, and assisting students and parents that if you have any financial aid questions or sometimes any other questions, at least putting you in touch with the correct department. So our No Barriers program, if any of you indicated that you were interested in applying for need-based financial aid, one of the features of that is it does get rid of the application fee to the institution. It's free to apply to the school. For students that are classified as Odyssey Scholars, they do have some additional funded career track opportunities, internships, externships, things of that nature. And then, of course, lifelong career support. If families haven't had a chance to go to any of the career development presentations, they touch on all the additional added bonuses of being a UChicago student and the career support they can achieve over the time that they're attending. Our Empower initiative, new for all of your students starting in autumn of 2019, now includes some happy bonuses. For families that have income under $125,000 with typical assets, there is a 4-year commitment for full tuition coverage. If you don't meet that qualification during one of your first or second years here and dip into that, it's locked in for the remainder of the time the student's here. Same thing for the $60,000 cutoff. If any family has an income of $60,000 or less, again with typical assets, tuition, room and board is covered during the entire time that they're at the institution. And that can change if your family's income goes up in a following year, they're still going to receive that commitment. A lot of times folk ask us what typical assets mean. What that really means is checking, savings, moderate value if you have some stocks, things of that nature. Atypical assets are things that might not be something that most families have. If you have secondary properties, rental properties, large businesses, large investments, things of that nature, even if you're meeting those income cutoffs, if you have several apartment buildings that you're drawing rental income from, that would be considered an atypical asset. So that could affect things. Students who are first-time, first-year students do receive a $20,000 first-year scholarship, and that is spread out over the course of the 4 years that they're here. That is merit-based and is renewable automatically. You don't have to reapply for aid to receive that. So we're going to talk about how our award is calculated via our cost of attendance and our family contribution. Our cost of attendance is made up of two kinds of costs, and every school has the same kind of structure, direct and indirect cost. A direct cost is something that you have to pay to the school. Tuition fees, room and board when your student's on campus. Indirect costs are things that you might pay. Books, supplies, transportation, personal expenses, things of that nature. That equals our total cost of attendance. And the example I always like to give of, think of it as a glass of water that is, in this instance, about $80,000 tall. The next thing that we do to determine need is we put in the EFC or institutional contributions. Those are the numbers that the FAFSA calculates and our institutional aid app or the CSS profile, if you've completed it, calculate. Then we pour in a student work expectation. So all students, while they're attending, do have a work component. Generally, it's around $5,000 for the first year. It doesn't mean the students have to work. It just means of the student's total cost of attendance, the university is looking to have at least $5,000 of it met by the student. Either work they've done previously over the summer, something called a summer work expectation, or funded opportunities while they're here, work, study, student employment. So our example cost of attendance for this upcoming school year is around $81,500. Our tuition, $57,000, the student life fee and UPass, $16,000. The class fee, that's something that they'll only pay for their first year. That's basically covering all the orientation and new student activities. And then room and board allotment. Those are all direct costs. The things in italics there, the books and supplies and personal expenses, those are indirect costs. Students may not spend $1,800 a year on books, nor may they have $2,100 in personal expenses. Sometimes students might have a little bit more, sometimes they might have a little bit less. But all that equals that total cost of attendance. For families that are not waiving out of the insurance, do keep in mind that there's also the additional insurance cost that would be added into this cost. It's about $4,500. As was mentioned earlier, families can waive out of that. And if your student is an Odyssey student, if they have the Odyssey Award on there, their insurance costs are covered while they're attending the institution. All they have to do is enroll in it, and we would put on a corresponding award that would cover that insurance cost. So how we calculate financial aid or that need is, again, we take that cost of attendance, that $81,000 tall glass, subtract out the parent contribution, subtract out the student contribution, so we pour those two things in the glass, and then the self-help work expectation, pour that in there, and then the remaining amount of the glass is what we fill up with financial aid, or for lack of a better term, free funds. We do have a no loan commitment here at the institution, and what that means is that we do not factor in during the initial aid determination what a student could borrow in student loans, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But first-year students, if you filed a FAFSA application, they can borrow up to $5,500. The way I like to highlight it is, if you're getting need-based financial aid from the institution, it's $5,500 more had we factored the loan eligibility in there. That said, students and parents can still borrow their loans if they wish to do so to help cover the student expectation, the parent expectation, things of that nature. The disbursement process, the bursar's office will apply all the tuition and fees towards the student's outstanding charges. All of our aid actually is going to disperse tomorrow morning. So if you or your students have been looking at your account and you see that number in there, a rather large number probably, that doesn't mean that's what you owe, that's just what you've been charged. All of the pending aid, if there's two little tabs in there, if you click the tab next to it that says financial aid, it'll show you all the pending aid that is going to disperse onto the account. As was mentioned, if they are receiving more aid than what their charges are, that is refundable. If there is still a little bit of a balance, that's what would eventually need to be rectified. All the resources, financial aid grants, loans, 529 payments, things of that nature, we'll all apply them pretty much straight away. If anybody has yet to be reviewed for financial aid, or if we are requesting additional documentation for FAFSA clarification, things of that nature, do not worry. Students are never dropped from classes for non-payment. They're never moved out of the dorms for non-payment. The only thing that'll happen is it will prevent future term registration. If we're still trying to get things cleaned up, it does not mean that your student's not eligible, nor does it mean that they would have any kind of less aid than another student. All of our need-based aid is not on a first-come, first-served basis. It's all independently evaluated by student. So if there's any parent in here that your student still hasn't turned something in, you'll still receive a full aid determination. We'll still do a full review. They still will get 100% of their eligible amount of money. And that goes for every year. In a little bit, we'll talk about renewability. when your student becomes a returning student, we're going to have a soft deadline in place to encourage them to turn in their documentation as soon as they can, but it is not a hard cutoff. Our billing dates, again, charges are assessed quarterly and invoices are going to be sent out monthly. So all of the autumn charges in autumn aid go on, then all of the winter charges in winter aid go on, and spring aid and spring aid goes on. So you may see your pending aid as a very large amount, but that's the yearly amount as opposed to the charges, which are just the term amount. So our federal and state grant eligible students, that stuff is dispersed straight onto the student's account. That can include MAP, if you're an Illinois resident, Pell, SEOG, if you're federally aid eligible, institutional grants, which is the UC grant or UC Grant 2, our Odyssey Scholarship, and then of course any merit-based aid. So if you're receiving a President's Award, Scholar Award, things of that nature, those go on there. If anybody is receiving anything National Merit, we do have a certification process where the National Merit folks work with us to make sure those are all on there. If students, for whatever reason, decide to take a leave of absence, a term off, things of that nature, they do need to update that status with the National Merit folks, just so they know not to send us a physical check, or we know not to try and award money if they're not going to be here. Anything that the family may be borrowing in the way of loans would also, of course, be dispersed to the student accounts. If students do want to make use of their Stafford student loans, they do have 3 requirements. One, they do need to make a loan request to our office indicating that they would like to make use of the loan. It doesn't mean they wouldn't be approved for it. They are guaranteed to get it no matter what. They do need to complete the steps to actually process it, which is on studentloans.gov. And those 2 steps are completing a master promissory note. That's the loan agreement between themselves and the federal government, and then something called entrance counseling. And what entrance counseling is it's like a quiz for the loan, so they know what their rights and responsibilities are. They only need to do that one time. If they've done that their first year here, that master promissory note and entrance are good for 10 years. So as long as they're enrolled at the institution. Hopefully they're not here for 10 years. Parents, if you wanted to borrow a Parent Plus loan, that has a similar process, also at studentloans.gov, but the difference is you would be logging in as the parent borrower. That has 2 components to it. One is a plus request, where you're requesting the loan. It is a credit-based determination, but it's a pretty soft credit check. So you would find out whether or not you were approved instantaneously. If you are, we receive electronic notification from the federal government. You don't have to do anything. They'll tell us. The second step would be, if you want to borrow the loan, is to complete something called a master promissory note of your own. That would also be sent to us electronically. If your credit denied the loan for any reason, your student does become eligible to borrow a few $1,000s more, $4,000 more for a first-year student in Stafford eligibility, and we would process that if we do see that denial. If you do get denied, you can contact Federal Student Aid and request an appeal. In some instances, it might be something as simple as there's a dentist bill that hasn't been paid for a few months, and that's causing that credit rejection. And if you wanted to go that route, you can do that. Keeping in mind, if you are credit approved on a parent denial, please do contact our office so we know to research, go back, look to put the Parent Plus loan back on. If folks are interested in borrowing something called a private loan, or alt loan as we call it, you may be able to find those via banks. We don't have any one lender we recommend over the other. There's a wide variety of loan products out there: Sallie Mae, Fifth Third, Wells Fargo, Discover, Citibank, including a large swath of folks that borrow stuff via their credit unions, small banks. If you find a lender that's going to give you a very good competitive rate, or your student rate if they're going to be borrowing and you're acting as a cosigner, we can set them up in our system. That's not a problem. We would never restrict somebody that you want to borrow from. If your student does intend to borrow an alternative or private loan, they will very likely require a cosigner, just due to the fact that they're a credit student and probably have a very limited credit history, but anybody can act as a cosigner. So if you as a parent wanted to do it, brother, sister, family friend, grandparent, aunt, uncle, it doesn't matter. Generally, the better the credit of the cosigner, the better chance they have of being approved for the loan and getting a more competitive interest rate. If you do have any questions about the alt loan process, or wanted to discuss how that might play into making use of a parent loan, a Stafford loan, all at the same time, please do contact our office. Student employment. So students are eligible to work for jobs on campus. Some students, if they're not very needy, may just have standard student employment. And students, if you do have some federal need, may qualify for something called federal work study. How much a work study student makes as opposed to a standard student employee is identical. It's just what bucket the department is paying out of on the back end. Federal work study students, they receive the same pay, but the government covers 75 cents on the dollar. So employers want the work study students because they can extend their work study budget. If your student does have work study eligibility, in their My UChicago profile, there'll be a work study eligibility letter that'll show them what they have. Generally, it's $3,000 for the first year. And they would provide that documentation to their potential employer, and then 2 other things. A copy of a photo ID, and then and I like to really accentuate this, the original Social Security card that is signed. So if anybody here is from out of state, you're probably thinking to yourself right now, my student Social Security card is sitting in a file cabinet in California. You would probably want to mail that back to your students so they can turn that into the office. They will make a copy of it and give it back to the student, but they do require the original Social Security card. And again, signed. I know a lot of times where students are 18 or 19 years old, goodness knows I didn't sign mine until I actually went to college and I needed to sign it. The wages are paid directly to the student. So work study isn't something that's actually paid up front. So if you're looking at that in your student's portal and you see I have UC grant, Pell grant, a Stafford loan, and work study won't pay preemptively. It's something that they have to earn. That said, it is paid back to the student biweekly via paycheck, either via direct deposit if they sign up for it, or they could get a physical check if they want to, but I highly recommend direct deposit. And then they can turn around and do whatever they want with those funds. If they want to pay it back to the institution, they can do that. If they want to go hit up the bookstore and buy you a UChicago mom or dad shirt, that would be nice. Or they can use it generally for what most students do, incidental expenses, books, supplies, personal entertainment, things of that nature. Students are limited to working 20 hours a week, but there's not a total number of employers they are limited to. So if they want to get 2 jobs on campus and work 4 hours at each job, they can do that. The most the students, again, can work is 20 hours due to the fact that they're here to go to school first, primarily, not be a work study student. If they're interested in trying to apply for a job, they could visit the University of Chicago Student Employment website, studentemployment.uchicago.edu, and they want to click on undergraduate, and then that'll bring them to the UChicago Handshake site, where they can log in with their information, indicate how much they have in work study eligibility or that they are work study eligible, and it'll show them all the available positions. Right now, there's probably a lot of positions out there just due to the fact that students are coming back onto campus. Professors and departments are looking for folks. That's not to say that there's going to be no jobs available, but the earlier they look, the better selection of positions they might have. Students do need to maintain their aid eligibility from year to year. They do need to be enrolled full-time, which is 300 or 400 units, to retain financial aid eligibility due to the fact that all of our aid is looking for full-time charges. If for whatever reason they are enrolled less than full-time, which is an extremely rare circumstance since the university does require students to be enrolled for full-time, it will prevent any of their institutional aid from dispersing. If they do end up in a situation like that, generally towards the later part of their time here, have them come to talk to us in our office. Students do need to maintain something called satisfactory academic progression, and that is a federal component and also institutional. What that means is students need to keep making progression towards getting their degree. Students can take a same class over and over again 5 times in a row and get 5 A's in it, but they're not making progression. They're not moving along as they should be. Students need to complete 70% of the units that they're attempting with the C or better. They may need to maintain at least a 2.0, and they need to get their program done within 150% of the leg of the program. So our program to get a bachelor's here is 4 years. They need to get it done in 6. If for whatever reason they drop beneath any of these thresholds, they could potentially have their financial aid not revoked, but kind of paused, and they may need to appeal with us. Generally, students that suffer from SAP issues are usually first and second year students, and it's usually due to the fact that someone may have contracted an illness and had to take a term off. You may not have had a great term, did not done so great in some of your classes, or took an extended leave of absence. If that does happen, we can send information to the student about appealing that, and if they have supporting documentation to go along with it, generally they're approved. So things that students need to do to renew their financial aid is they do need to complete a new FAFSA every year. For anybody that is really interested in doing one, it will be available on Tuesday, October 1st for the 2021 year, and it's going to use your 2018 tax information. So I know as soon as you're done moving all your kids in and going back home, you're more than happy to sit down and do a federal aid form. That said, you don't have to. Our returning students, which your students will now be considered, really need to submit all their documentation in the spring. When you're a new student, we have them apply during their admissions cycle or their application to the institution. Returning students, we bump down a little bit later. So while all your students probably got an aid decision with or very close to when they were admitted in the institution, returning student aid decisions usually don't go out until about July. So do keep that in mind. All that said, provided your family finances are remaining relatively consistent and your household size is remaining relatively consistent with number in college, the aid determination is going to be relatively consistent from year to year. So as long as you don't have older siblings that are graduating, or if you got a gigantic raise at work or won the lottery, you'll probably receive a very similar aid consideration from year to year. Again, we're going to send out reminder emails to students specifically. I always like to highlight that. During your admissions process, there was probably a lot of cross-communication between admissions officers, other staff on campus, to you, the parents. But once students do become matriculated or enroll into the institution, something called FERPA kicks in, which is called the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. If any of you are familiar with HIPAA, the medical one, FERPA is a federal education one. Only communication between the student and the university typically will take place unless parents specifically ask and students grant the permission to have us talk to you. So a lot of times parents say, I'm not getting email reminders that my student needs to pay their bill, or I'm not getting email reminders that my student needs to reapply for financial aid. That is because it is going directly to your student. The vast majority of our communications do go to the student's UChicago email address. That said, they can set up forwarding rules, many students do, to have it forwarded to a private email address. They can add you on there as well. When students do apply, we're going to need the institutional application, which is available in their profile or in their UChicago portal. You can complete a CSS profile if you want to do so. We'll take that, but the university questionnaire is considerably shorter and it's free. 2, the FAFSA application. Again, you could do it October 1st if you want to. And then we require parental 2018 tax information for the following year. We, same as the federal government, look at prior tax data. That said, if more recent tax data becomes more applicable, we can take a look at that, and I'll touch on that in a second. Sometimes additional documentation may be required. Some of your students may be selected for a process called verification, where we're required by the government to double check the FAFSA application, or other times we may only receive partial copies of tax returns or things that just don't quite make sense at the initial onset, so we'll ask for some additional information. Again, aid eligibility is reevaluated every year, so as family finances can change from year to year, household sizes can change from year to year, aid can change from year to year. But as I mentioned, generally, if everything stays relatively consistent, that aid package is going to remain relatively consistent. So we do make some special considerations in regards to students' aid determinations. For one, living on or off campus. First and second year students, your class is required to live on campus for the first 2 years. If they do move off campus in their third year, it will affect their cost of attendance. So that glass I talked about, that glass of water that's $81,000 tall, it shrinks by $5,000. So it would become $76,000 tall. The work component that we're putting in there and the family contribution that we're putting in there are identical. So there's a little bit less room for financial aid. So it would have a $5,000 impact on the student's aid. That said, the amount that they're going to get charged by the institution is going to go down by $17,000. So instead of paying the university for that directly, if you're making $15,000 to $17,000 worth of payments for the year, you would just be paying that to whoever the student is renting or leasing from. One thing I do like to remind parents and students is when you do move off campus, we're only budgeting the student for the time that they're enrolled here at the university, whereas if you're moving off, you may be signing up for a year-long rental or lease agreement, so do plan accordingly. Either if you're getting a refund, set some of that money aside, or be prepared to have to absorb some of that rental cost while we're not in term. For students that are studying abroad, we do make an aid determination or reconsideration. Everybody has that work expectation. When you're abroad, obviously can't do that. That could result in some different financial aid. And of course, if the abroad program has a larger cost than what typically it costs to live on campus, that could have some aid reconsideration as well. If any of your students are interested in doing studying abroad, and a very large majority of the students here at UChicago do abroad programs, have them come in and talk to us. We don't ever want to have somebody try to, or not go on an abroad trip or skip it because they think, oh, I can't afford this or I might not get enough financial aid. Do have them come talk to our office. There's probably a lot more opportunities out there than you might think. The USHIP charges, again, as was mentioned earlier during the bursar section, those will remain on the account until they're either waived out, or if your student's an Odyssey student, enrolling in the Odyssey USHIP insurance, which would cover it for free. If you do just enroll in it, obviously then, and you're not getting Odyssey, it would just be charged to you. That does waive it out for the entire year. In some rare instances, if families wait too long to waive it out, they may only be able to waive it out for winter and spring, and you may still have to pay that charge for the autumn term. So do get on your student, if they haven't already done that, to definitely go ahead and waive that out, because after, I believe it is October 12th, they become auto-enrolled in it, whether they want it or not. Special circumstances that I did touch on earlier. We are aware that both the federal aid application and our institute aid application are just purely looking at numbers and self-reported information and may not be aware of other special circumstances or issues that have befallen the family. And we do want you to reach out to us if there's anything like that. The big ones that we do take a look at are loss of household income or assets. So if there's been a decrease in employment or complete loss of employment and a job loss, if a lot of your pay was made up of a bonus or overtime structure, or if there's been a reduction in pay at work, if there's been a natural disaster that has befallen your family. A few years ago, we had some outreach to the folks down in Houston due to the hurricanes. Change in parent marital status if there's divorce or separation or a spouse has passed away. And then, of course, significant medical expenses. If there's a large, generally it's 11% or more of your household income is being paid in medical expenses. And then again, if your most recent tax information is the most applicable. So if even right now you've applied for 2017, but lost your job in 2018, and you're thinking, well, I'll be using that next year, please do reach out to our office. We can take a look at that. Some things that we don't take into consideration, obviously, are consumer debt issues. So unfortunately, if there's large mortgages, payments, credit cards, things of that nature, that's not something that we can take into consideration. But if there's anything that's essentially outside of the control of the family, please do reach out to us. And then finally, our office is located in the Walker Building, or Walker Museum. If you're familiar with Rosenwald, the building that has the admissions office in it, we are the building directly to the left of that. We are located on the 3rd floor. Our office is open from 8:30 to 4:30 Central, Monday through Friday. No appointments are required. We have open walk-in hours, and we always have counselors available to meet with students and parents. So if anybody had a call or had a question, you wanted to walk in, please do feel free to do so. For any parent that's still on campus this upcoming Monday, we will be open at 8:30 in the morning. So if you wanted to come in with your student, hang out and chat about financial aid and see what available options there are, you can do that. And for any parent in here, and I may have mentioned it earlier, if you still haven't applied, if you're a domestic applicant and still wanted to apply for financial aid for this upcoming year, you still can do so. We don't have a hard cutoff other than really the end of the year. We do ask you, obviously, to turn in your documentation as soon as you possibly can so we can give you an age determination as soon as you can, but you can still apply if you need to do so. And with that, my section is over, and we will open it up to questions.